All right, let's get right into it. You've probably heard the term entrepreneurial mindset thrown around a lot, right? Well, today, we're going to crack that concept wide open. We're not just going to define it, we're going to deconstruct it and turn it into a practical blueprint. We're going to figure out what it really means to think like a founder. So let's start with the most basic question of all. What actually makes someone an entrepreneur? Is it having some brilliant light bulb moment idea? Is it a pile of cash from investors? Or a perfect 50-page business plan? I mean, sure, those things can be part of the story, but they're not the main thing. They miss the most crucial piece of the puzzle. Because here's the reality. It's not about the idea. Brilliant ideas are everywhere. Seriously. The thing that really separates the people who build stuff from those who just stream about it, it's the way they think. It's their mindset. That's the engine that actually turns a thought into a reality. So what exactly is this mindset? Well, to put it simply, it's a way of looking at the world that lets you spot opportunities and create something valuable, especially when everything's chaotic and the path forward is anything but clear. And here's the key takeaway. This isn't some magic trait you're born with. It's a set of skills that you can absolutely learn and develop. Okay, so to really understand this, we have to start with its foundations. Think of these as the pillars, the core behaviors that hold the entire structure up. Let's break them down. So check this out. These five components kind of work together in a sequence. It all starts with an opportunity orientation. That's about seeing what could be instead of just getting bogged down by what's broken. But seeing isn't enough, right? So next comes proactivity. You actually do something about it instead of waiting for the perfect time. And that requires a comfort with uncertainty because you're never going to have all the answers. Now, when things go wrong, and believe me, they will, that's where resilience comes in. It lets you treat failure as data, not a disaster. Think about the founders of Airbnb getting rejected over and over. That was just data telling them to change their pitch. And all of this is wrapped up in a learning orientation. This core idea that your initial plan is just a guess, a hypothesis you're totally prepared to test and change. Okay, so those are the actions, the core behaviors. But what about the attitudes that power them? Let's get into the key psychological traits. Think of this as the founder's inner toolkit. First up is something called an internal locus of control. It sounds a little academic, but it's really simple. It's the core belief that you are in the driver's seat. It's the conviction that your actions, not luck, not external forces, are what determine your success or failure. This is what stops you from making excuses and pushes you to solve problems. Next, you need a tolerance for risk and ambiguity. Now, this does not mean being reckless. It's not about jumping off cliffs. It's about being able to operate effectively in the fog, to make a call when the future is blurry, and to take smart, calculated risks when the potential reward is worth it. Then we've got self-efficacy. This is your deep down belief that you can get the job done. It's not about thinking you're great at everything. It's very specific. You might have high self-efficacy for writing code, but low self-efficacy for public speaking. It's that belief in your ability to handle a specific task that pushes you to try hard things, and more importantly, to stick with them. And finally, the all-important growth mindset. This is the belief that your talents aren't fixed. It's knowing that abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. For an entrepreneur, this is absolutely critical. You constantly have to get good at new things you know nothing about, from raising money to marketing to being a leader. So we have the what, the behaviors and the traits, but what about the why? We've got to understand what actually fuels this engine in the first place. Generally, motivations fall into two big buckets: push factors and pull factors. Push factors are the negative things that push you away from your current situation: a dead-end job, a career ceiling, or maybe just pure economic necessity. Pull factors, on the other hand, are the positive things pulling you towards something new: the desire for freedom and control, the need to express your creativity, or the chance to make a real impact. For most people, it's a little of both. And this is so important because why you start completely shapes what you end up building. Your motivation literally determines your destination. This usually leads down one of two main paths. You have the lifestyle entrepreneur who builds a business to support a certain way of living. They often keep the business small on purpose to maintain flexibility and control. Think of a freelance web developer or a local bakery owner. Then you have the growth-oriented entrepreneur. This person is trying to build an empire. They're focused on massive scale, they're looking for investors, building huge teams. And listen, neither one is better than the other. They're just different answers to the fundamental question, what are you building this for? Okay, so we've deconstructed the whole mindset. We've looked at all the parts. Now for the most important section. How do you actually build it? This is the practical toolkit. This is how you put it all into action. First things first, let's kill a myth. Successful entrepreneurs are not reckless gamblers. They are disciplined risk managers. A reckless risk is a blind bet. A calculated risk is totally different. It means you actually assess the potential downside. You find ways to limit your exposure, like maybe starting your company as a side hustle. You run small, cheap experiments to test your assumptions before you go all in. It's a strategy, not just flipping a coin. You also have to realize that your own brain will play tricks on you. We all have these things called cognitive biases. There's overconfidence, where you think you know more than you actually do. Confirmation bias is where you only look for information that confirms what you already believe. And my favorite, the planning fallacy. That's why every project takes way longer and costs way more than you expect. Then there's status quo bias, which keeps you stuck on a failing path because change is uncomfortable. You can't just get rid of these, but simply being aware of them is the first huge step to fighting them. And of course, you need emotional muscle. We're talking about resilience and grit. Resilience is how quickly you can bounce back after getting knocked down. Grit is that combination of passion and perseverance that lets you stick with a goal for the long haul. You know, James Dyson made over 5,000 failed prototypes before he made his vacuum. That's resilience and grit in action. And these aren't just things you have or you don't. They're skills you can strengthen with practice. So how can you start building this mindset like right now? Here are 4 practical things. 1. Start a small experiment. Launch a tiny side project. Get comfortable making decisions without all the data. 2. Seek out different fields. Read books or articles from a totally different industry. Innovation happens at the intersections. 3. Join a community. Go to meetups or find an online group. Being around other people on the same journey normalizes the struggle. And 4, a huge one, find mentors. Learn from people who have already made all the mistakes you're about to make. So in the end, this mindset isn't just a list of abstract treats. It's a blueprint. It's a concrete plan of action for turning uncertainty into opportunity. So the final question isn't whether or not you have it. The real question is, what are you going to build with it?
Ever wonder what the real difference is between a tech startup that becomes a household name and one that just disappears? A lot of the time, it's not the idea, and it's not even the money. It's this invisible engine humming behind the scenes, the founder's mindset. So let's dive in and really unpack what that means.
So, what is it? What's that secret ingredient? I can tell you right now, it's not a lightning strike of luck, and it's way more than just having a killer idea. The single most critical factor, as we're about to see, is something that happens inside your own head, a very specific and very powerful way of thinking.
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. What is this entrepreneurial mindset anyway? We've got to define the spark before we can understand the fire. So here's the textbook definition, but let's break it down. It's basically a mental operating system for making cool things happen when you don't have all the answers. And here's the most important part of all. You are not born with this. It's a skill. It's a way of thinking that anyone, and I mean anyone, can learn and get better at.
So let's get a little more granular. This whole mindset is really built on 5 key habits of thought. First, it's about seeing possibilities where everyone else just sees problems. It's about being proactive, actually doing something instead of just talking about it. A big one is getting comfortable making decisions without knowing everything. And then there's resilience, treating failure not as the end, but as super valuable data. And finally, viewing every single plan you make as just a starting guess, a hypothesis that you need to go out and test.
All right, so if those are the habits, what are the actual tools inside the founder's head? Let's pop the hood and take a look at the psychological toolkit they use every day. Think of this as their internal compass and map for the whole crazy journey.
Okay, this is a huge one. It all comes down to a simple question. Do you believe you're in the driver's seat of your own life? That's an internal locus of control. It means you believe your actions shape your results, which pushes you to solve problems. The flip side is believing you're just a passenger, that everything is up to fate or luck. That leads to waiting around for things to happen. You can probably guess which side of the screen successful founders live on.
And this right here is the perfect companion to that last idea. A founder has to be a learning machine. One day you're learning about code, the next it's marketing, then it's accounting. A growth mindset, the core belief that you can get better at things through sheer effort, is absolutely non-negotiable. If you have a fixed mindset, if you think you're either good at it or not good at it, the first real challenge you face is going to stop you dead in your tracks.
So, we have the mental tools, we've got the core beliefs. But that's not enough to build a company. What's the fuel in the tank? What's the driving force that actually ignites this incredibly difficult journey in the first place?
Well, motivation usually comes from one of two directions. You can be pushed into starting something because you're running away from a bad situation, like a terrible job or no opportunities, or you can be pulled towards something amazing, the dream of being your own boss, creating something new, or making a real impact. And while both can get you started, it's usually those pull factors that keep you going when things get tough.
And you know what? Those different motivations usually lead to two very different types of businesses. Are you building something to support a certain lifestyle, where flexibility and control are the main goals? Or are you swinging for the fences, trying to build a massive company that can scale? Look, neither one is better than the other, but it is absolutely crucial to know why you're doing it so you can build the right what for you.
But let's be real. This path is not a straight, sunny road. It's more like a journey through a thick fog, full of uncertainty and wrong turns. So how do the best founders navigate all that? Well, it comes down to getting really good at two things: managing risk and building resilience.
This is probably one of the biggest myths out there we need to bust right now. Great founders are not reckless gamblers. They're not just jumping off cliffs hoping a parachute appears. No, they are more like disciplined scientists. They figure out the biggest unknowns and then design small, cheap, clever experiments to find answers before they go all in.
Now, part of managing risk is knowing how to manage your own brain, because our brains can trick us. We are all hardwired with these funny little glitches called cognitive biases. We tend to overestimate how great we are. We love to hear information that confirms what we already believe, and we are terrible, I mean terrible, at estimating how long things will take. Just knowing these traps exist is the first giant step to not falling into them.
So what about when you do hit a wall? Because you will. Resilience isn't some magical trait. It's a skill you build with practice. It's a system. You do it by breaking down huge, scary goals into tiny, achievable wins. You train yourself to see setbacks not as failures, but as experiments that just gave you some really interesting data. And you protect your own well-being with routines for sleep and exercise. It's a system, not a superpower.
Okay, so we've defined the mindset, we've looked at the inner toolkit, and we've talked about how to navigate the fog. Now for the most important part of all. How do you actually start forging this mindset for yourself starting today?
This isn't just theory. This mindset is built through action. You don't have to quit your job tomorrow. Just start a tiny side project to get your hands dirty. Read a book about a totally different field to spark new ideas. Surround yourself with other people who are also trying to build things. And find someone who's a few steps ahead of you and learn from their mistakes. You literally become what you do.
So in the end, we basically laid out the map for you. But a map doesn't do you any good if it just stays rolled up on a shelf. You have to actually take the first step. Which brings us to the only question that really matters right now. What's the first small, tiny experiment you're going to run this week to start building this mindset for yourself?